If you enjoyed this podcast summary, please consider subscribing. Stuart McMillan is one of the world's most sought-after coaches for teaching people how to get stronger, run faster, be more powerful, and healthier. He's coached over 70 Olympians across 9 Olympic Games and has worked with players and coaches of every major professional sport. McMillan explains how skipping and striding are zero-cost activities that we can all include in our weekly fitness routine to build more power, speed, coordination, and improve our muscle, fascial, and nervous system function. For McMillan, running fast is the ultimate human activity. He believes that the fastest person on the planet is the fastest person on the planet, and that's what makes sprinting so fascinating. He's coached many sports and activities, but sprinting is what interests him the most. McMillan prefers coaching the 200 meters because it requires a tactical component, combining the capacity to run fast with the ability to think about how to run the race. When it comes to comparing the fastest person in the 100 meters versus the 200 versus the 400, McMillan believes that the fastest person in the 100 meters is the fastest person on the planet. However, he prefers coaching the 200 meters because it requires more tactics and strategy. He explains that the 200 meters is not an all-out sprint, and athletes need to think about how to set up their race and finish strong. McMillan also talks about the importance of proper form and technique when it comes to sprinting. He explains that even young athletes can be identified as potential sprinters based on their ability to interact with the ground and apply force efficiently. He recalls a moment when he spotted a young athlete who had a natural ability to sprint, despite not having perfect form. McMillan believes that the best athletes are always the ones who make it look the easiest, and that's what sets them apart from others. When it comes to determining whether someone is meant for a particular distance, McMillan believes that it's possible to tell based on how they perform in a slightly different distance. However, he also notes that it's not always easy to determine, and that athletes can often surprise you with their abilities. At 12 to 14 years old, they shouldn't specialize in one event, but rather explore different disciplines to find what they enjoy and excel at. Even in NCAA Division I college programs, sprinters often participate in multiple events, and it's not until later that they specialize.
Andrew Huberman shares his personal experience with running, having shifted in high school and continuing to run for pleasure. He mentions the story of Steve Prefontaine, who was initially interested in running the mile, but was guided by his coach to focus on the 5,000 meters, where he excelled.
Stuart McMillan shares the story of Jody Williams, a British sprinter he coached, who won 150 straight races in the 100 and 200 meters as a young athlete. However, she didn't transition to being an elite sprinter and eventually found her niche in the 400 meters. McMillan emphasizes that finding the right event is not just about physical ability, but also about personal connection and enjoyment.
Andrew Huberman notes that this process of discovery is similar to finding one's career path or passion in life. He mentions that dedicated application to one area can lead to success, but it's also important to be open to exploring different paths.
Stuart McMillan discusses the importance of movement in self-discovery, citing the example of Jody Williams, who found her true calling in the 400 meters after years of focusing on the 100 and 200 meters.
Andrew Huberman asks about the mechanics of walking, jogging, and running, and Stuart McMillan explains that there are 5 separate gait patterns. Walking typically involves a heel-to-toe roll, while jogging and running involve different patterns.
McMillan emphasizes that the key is to self-organize towards the most efficient pattern, rather than trying to force a specific technique. Stuart McMillan explains that the speed of movement determines the foot strike, and that thinking about being flat-footed can help the foot take care of itself. He also notes that dorsiflexion and plantar flexion are important concepts in understanding foot movement.
Andrew Huberman asks about body position and running mechanics, and Stuart McMillan advises that the eyes should be focused straight ahead, but not too far ahead, as this can affect posture and movement. He notes that this is more important for sprinting than for longer distances.
Stuart McMillan emphasizes that the key to efficient movement is to self-organize towards the most efficient pattern, rather than trying to force a specific technique. He notes that this is true for walking, jogging, and running, and that the speed of movement determines the foot strut.
Andrew Huberman shares his experience with yoga and how it has helped him with his weightlifting. He mentions a specific movement in yoga that involves hanging over at the waist and then standing up, deliberately starting at the lower spine and unpeeling himself from the folded position. He notes that this movement has been helpful in his gym work, particularly with glute ham raises and deadlifts. Stuart McMillan asks Andrew if he was taught to look at the ceiling or up on the wall when squatting, and Andrew responds that he was told the weight will go where his eyes go. Stuart expresses confusion about where this instruction came from, and Andrew shares his own experience with learning proper form in the gym. Andrew Huberman discusses the importance of moving the chest and hips together when squatting and deadlifting, and how this helps to maintain proper posture and avoid the dreaded good morning back raise. He also mentions the importance of driving the feet into the ground when deadlifting, rather than trying to pull the weight off the floor. The conversation turns to running and sprinting, with Andrew expressing his belief that everyone can and should run, and that sprinting is more valuable than jogging. Andrew Huberman shares his experience with skipping and how it feels natural and enjoyable. He notes that skipping is a bit more taxing than people believe, but it's a great way to cover a lot of ground quickly and improve posture. The conversation turns to the importance of knee behind butt, with Andrew Huberman noting that it means the hips are opening and the posture is more elevated. He wonders if minute for minute, skipping would be a better activity than jogging for people who want to elevate their heart rate and improve insulin regulation. Unlike jogging, which can feel closed and small, skipping allows for a more rhythmic and bouncy movement.
McMillan suggests incorporating skipping into one's jog by alternating between skipping and jogging every 30 seconds. This can help improve one's jogging and make it feel more enjoyable. As one becomes more comfortable with skipping, they can start to add more power and expression to their skips, eventually working up to more intense skipping workouts.
Andrew Huberman notes that activities like skipping can serve as a transition into more difficult activities, both physical and mental. He shares his own experience of using drawing as a way to transition into writing, and how it helps him get into a flow state. Similarly, skipping can be used as a transition into faster gaits, such as striding or sprinting.
McMillan explains that in running, the concentric phase is important, but it's the eccentric phase that's crucial for speed. He notes that most people can't sprint, but they can stride, which is a more accessible and safer way to improve speed. To transition into striding, one needs to focus on quality of movement, rather than just trying to get the work done. McMillan suggests that striding is like a spring mass system, where the body acts as a spring, hitting and bouncing off the ground. McMillan also notes that the surface on which one skips doesn't matter, as long as it's flat and safe. To transition into striding, McMillan suggests focusing on taking up more space and being more expressive in one's movement. He notes that striding happens in front of the center of mass, with a longer eccentric phase and a shorter propulsive phase. By focusing on quality of movement and taking up more space, one can start to develop the skills needed for striding and eventually sprinting. This is due to the fact that elite sprinters can move their limbs fast enough to create a secondary mass that contributes to the force generated. However, most people, including athletes in other sports, do not have this ability and instead operate as a spring mass system.
Andrew Huberman brings up the topic of longevity and how maintaining mobility and strength is crucial for older adults. He mentions that Dr. Peter Attia has talked about how falls are a major cause of death in older people, and how maintaining grip strength and the ability to jump and land is essential for preventing falls. Huberman wonders if skipping could be a good activity for older adults to learn eccentric control and improve their mobility.
Stuart McMillan agrees that skipping is an excellent way to improve eccentric control and mobility, and that it's an activity that can be done by people of all ages. He shares a story about his father, who is 78 years old and still runs 4 days a week, including skipping sessions. McMillan believes that skipping is a great way to improve plyometric capacity, and that it's an activity that can be done anywhere without any equipment.
Andrew Huberman notes that the name skipping might be a barrier for some people, as it's often associated with childlike behavior. He suggests that giving it a different name, such as bounding or plyometrics, might make it more appealing to adults.
Stuart McMillan agrees that the name might be a separator, but he believes that skipping is a valuable activity that should be promoted. Stuart McMillan explains that bounding is a more challenging activity than skipping, and that it involves moving the legs in a left-right pattern. He notes that skipping is a regression from bounding, and that it's a more accessible activity for most people. McMillan believes that skipping is a great way to improve plyometric capacity, and that it's an activity that can be done anywhere.
Andrew Huberman talks about the importance of cross-body coordination in movement and how it's essential for activities like sprinting. He notes that when we walk, we naturally rotate our hips and shoulders, and that this rotation is essential for generating force and power.
Stuart McMillan agrees and notes that some people are more effective at using this cross-body coordination than others. He notes that some people are more effective at using this system than others, and that it's essential for generating force and power. McMillan believes that paying attention to this cross-body coordination can help people improve their movement and reduce their risk of injury.
Andrew Huberman notes that the conversation about cross-body coordination is relevant to dance, and that he'll be discussing dance with Stuart McMillan later in the conversation. He also notes that he'll be talking about sprinting and how it's not just about turning over the legs faster, but also about coordinating the arms and legs in a specific way. Andrew Huberman agrees, stating that naming matters, especially in exercise and wellness, as it can affect people's mindset and approach. The conversation shifts to the topic of cross-body coordination and how people's constant phone use might be affecting their ability to move naturally.
Stuart McMillan shares his personal rule of stopping to check his phone while walking, rather than doing both at the same time. He believes that this constant phone use can lead to unnatural and constrained posture.
Andrew Huberman brings up the example of Usain Bolt, who is known for his unique expression and movement style.
Stuart McMillan notes that Usain's childlike intensity and willingness to have fun contributed to his success. He also mentions that not everyone needs to be like Usain, citing the example of Andre DeGrasse, who is more introverted and quiet, but still successful in his own way. The conversation touches on the idea that people can detect when someone is being authentic or not.
Andrew Huberman mentions that he's had conversations with Rick Rubin about why certain musical artists are successful, and it often comes down to them being themselves.
Stuart McMillan agrees, stating that there's something to be said for ignorance and a lack of self-awareness, which can allow people to express themselves more freely. The discussion also explores the idea that movement can teach us who we are, in addition to allowing us to express ourselves. Stuart McMillan shares an example of an athlete he's working with who has been coached to move in a way that doesn't align with her natural abilities. He's trying to help her reconnect with her essence and move in a way that feels authentic to her.
Andrew Huberman recalls the example of Michael Jordan's coach encouraging Dennis Rodman to be himself, despite his unconventional appearance and personality. This approach allowed Dennis to thrive and be successful in his own way. The conversation highlights the importance of embracing individuality and authenticity in movement and expression. He believes that each athlete should be allowed to find their own unique way of moving and expressing themselves, rather than trying to conform to a specific style or technique learning from video.
Stuart McMillan, a renowned coach, shares his expertise on how to improve power, speed, coordination, and overall health through simple activities like skipping and striding. He emphasizes the importance of proper form and technique, as well as finding the right event or activity that suits an individual's abilities and interests. The conversation also touches on the importance of movement in self-discovery, cross-body coordination, and the role of genetics and environment in determining athletic ability. McMillan stresses the importance of authenticity, creativity, and individuality in movement and sports, and shares his approach to coaching, which focuses on identifying non-negotiables and respecting individual uniqueness. The discussion also covers topics like force transmission, isometric strength training, and the importance of recovery, sleep, and nutrition in achieving success in sports. Overall, the conversation provides valuable insights and actionable advice on how to improve speed, mobility, and longevity through plyometrics and sprinting. Key takeaways include the importance of proper form and technique, finding the right event or activity, and respecting individual uniqueness. By incorporating simple activities like skipping and striding into your weekly routine, you can improve your power, speed, coordination, and overall health. Additionally, by focusing on authenticity, creativity, and individuality in movement and sports, you can achieve greater success and enjoyment in your athletic pursuits. If you are interested to listen to complete 26-minute summary and unlock detailed insights for each topic discussed in the video, check out quick podcast summaries on Spotify and Apple Podcasts with free trial and later, just for the price of candy. Happy listening.